She texted me for a divorce from her work conference and emptied our retirement accounts. But I was one step ahead. The blue light of my phone illuminated the darkness of our bedroom at 11:42 p.m. I was half asleep when Lisa's text came through, jolting me awake like a bucket of ice water to the face. "Hey Rob, been thinking about this for a while. I want a divorce. Already moved our retirement funds to my private account. My lawyer will be in touch about the house and other assets. Have a good life." A smiley face. She ended her divorce announcement with a goddamn smiley face. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. 15 years of marriage reduced to a text message sent from a Marriott in Chicago where she was attending her company's annual marketing conference. My hands trembled as I read it again, the casual cruelty of her words sinking in. The bedroom suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. I stumbled to the kitchen, flipped on the harsh overhead light, and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The amber liquid burned going down, but the pain was clarifying. I needed clarity now more than ever. What Lisa didn't know, what she had never bothered to ask about during our marriage, was that before we met, I had spent 6 years building financial security systems for major banks. I had witnessed firsthand how quickly people could lose everything they'd worked for, often at the hands of those they trusted most. My close friend Marcus had lost everything in his divorce 5 years ago. His wife had systematically emptied their accounts over 3 months before dropping the bomb. By the time he realized what was happening, she had squirreled away nearly $800,000 and left him with nothing but debt in a house he couldn't afford. "Never saw it coming," he had told me, his eyes hollow with shock as we sat in his nearly empty living room, the indentations on the carpet still showing where furniture had recently been. 22 years together, and I never thought to check. She even took the dog, Rob. Who takes a man's dog? His devastation had scared me into action. Not because I didn't trust Lisa, I did, or thought I did, but because Marcus's story taught me that blind trust was financial suicide. So I built my own private monitoring system, linking all our accounts to a secure server that would alert me to any unusual activity. It was complicated, perhaps even paranoid, but I slept better knowing it existed. "You're such a worrier," Lisa would say whenever I brought up financial planning, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the table. "That's why I let you handle all that boring money stuff." She'd wave her hand dismissively, preferring to focus on her rising career at Apex Marketing Solutions, where she'd recently been promoted to Director of Client Services. The promotion had come with a significant raise and a level of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Lisa started working later, traveling more, buying expensive clothes that she claimed were necessary for the position. I supported her, celebrated her success, even when it meant I was often alone in our large suburban house, waiting for her to return from another business dinner or weekend conference. As I stared at her text message, the initial shock gave way to a cold, analytical clarity. I reached for my laptop and pulled up my monitoring dashboard. The system had been pinging me for days, but I'd been swamped with work and hadn't checked it. Now, as the data loaded, my stomach twisted. There they were, a series of large transfers from our joint retirement accounts. First $50,000, then $175,000, and finally just yesterday, the remaining $320,000. All transferred to an account I didn't recognize, all authorized with Lisa's credentials. But my system didn't just track movements, it assessed risk based on patterns, timing, and destination. These transfers had triggered multiple red flags, uncharacteristically large amounts, unusual hours, 3 a.m. for the largest transfer, and a recently created receiving account. The system had automatically generated and filed fraud alerts with our financial institutions. I allowed myself a grim smile as I pulled up the status report. Every single transferred dollar was now frozen, pending investigation. My phone buzzed again. "What the hell did you do?" "My card just got declined at the hotel bar." "Fix this now." I took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected calm wash over me. I typed back, "Fraud alert, talk to your lawyer." Then I turned off my phone and dug deeper into the data. What I found over the next 4 hours made my blood run cold. Lisa hadn't just tried to clean out our retirement accounts. My system had captured login attempts to our home equity line of credit, our investment portfolio, and even my personal checking account. She'd been methodical, working her way through our finances like she was checking items off a shopping list. But there was something else, something that didn't make sense. Among the transfer records were several transactions that didn't match any of our account numbers. I cross-referenced them against my database and felt my eyebrows shoot up. These were corporate account numbers, specifically from Apex Marketing's client trust accounts. Holy shit. Lisa wasn't just stealing from me, she was embezzling from her company. I worked until dawn, meticulously documenting everything. By 7 a.m., I had compiled a comprehensive report showing that Lisa had siphoned over $300,000 from Apex Marketing's client accounts over the past 3 months. She had been funneling the money through a series of shell accounts before consolidating it with our retirement funds, likely assuming that mixing the money would blur the trail. It was amateur hour. She was good at marketing, terrible at financial crime. I made myself a strong cup of coffee and considered my options. I could confront her directly, but that might give her time to cover her tracks or even flee. I could wait for her to return from Chicago and let her walk into the mess she'd created. Or I could take action now. My phone, which I had turned back on, buzzed with a barrage of texts and missed calls from Lisa. Each message grew increasingly desperate. "Answer me, Rob. What did you do to my accounts? My lawyer says you can't freeze joint assets like this. This is illegal. I swear to God, if you don't fix this right now." The final message, sent just minutes ago, sent a chill down my spine. "Fine. You want to play dirty? James is flying me home today. We'll see how smug you are when we get there. Hope you're ready for what's coming." James. The name struck a chord of recognition. James Mercer was Apex's CFO, the man who had personally promoted Lisa last year. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Lisa and James weren't just colleagues. They were partners in more ways than one. I remembered the company Christmas party 6 months ago. I'd noticed something off about the way James looked at Lisa. A lingering glance, a hand placed too low on her back when he thought no one was watching. I dismissed it as my imagination, maybe even a touch of jealousy on my part. Lisa had laughed when I mentioned it on the drive home. "James, are you serious?" she'd said, rolling her eyes. "He's married with 3 kids, and he's not even my type. You're being ridiculous." I'd believed her. Like a fool, I'd believed her. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd never thought I'd need. "FBI Financial Crimes Division. How may I direct your call?" "I need to report a case of corporate embezzlement and attempted theft of personal assets." The next hour was a flurry of activity. I emailed my compiled evidence to the agent I spoke with, who promised to escalate the case immediately. By noon, 2 agents were at my house, reviewing my monitoring system and taking my formal statement. "Mr. Sullivan, I have to say, this is some of the most comprehensive financial documentation I've ever seen from a civilian," Agent Diana Reeves said, looking up from her tablet. She was in her early 40s, with dark eyes that missed nothing and the confident posture of someone who'd seen it all. Behind her stood Agent Thomas, a younger man who hadn't said much but watched everything with intense focus. "When Marcus, my friend, got cleaned out by his ex, it scared me," I explained. "I built this system for peace of mind, never thinking I'd actually need it." "Well, it's fortunate that you did," she replied. "Based on what you've shown us, this isn't just a domestic dispute. This is coordinated financial fraud across multiple accounts, including corporate embezzlement." "What happens now?" I asked. "We've already contacted the Chicago field office. Agents will intercept Ms. Sullivan and Mr. Mercer before they board their flight back to Boston." Agent Reeves closed her tablet cover. "We'll need formal statements from you, and you'll likely be called to testify if this goes to trial." "When?" Agent Thomas corrected, speaking for the first time. His voice was unexpectedly deep for his youthful appearance. "When this goes to trial, the evidence is overwhelming." I nodded, feeling oddly hollow. Despite everything, a part of me still couldn't believe Lisa was capable of this. We'd met at a friend's barbecue 12 years ago. I'd spilled beer on her white sundress, and instead of getting angry, she'd laughed and said it gave the dress character. We were married 6 months later in a small ceremony on Cape Cod. She'd been so beautiful that day, so seemingly genuine. Had all of it been a lie, or had something changed along the way? "There's something else you should know," Agent Reeves said, interrupting my thoughts. "We ran preliminary background checks on both your wife and Mr. Mercer. It seems this isn't the first time he's been investigated." "What?" I looked up, surprised. 3 years ago, at his previous company, there was an internal investigation into missing client funds. Nothing was ever proven, but he left shortly after. "And your wife?" She hesitated. "What about her?" She's not exactly who she claims to be. Her resume at Apex lists a marketing degree from Boston University, but there's no record of her graduating. She attended for 2 years, then dropped out. The news hit me like a physical blow. Lisa had always talked about her college years, her marketing professors, her sorority sisters. Had those been lies too? There's more, Agent Reeves continued. She legally changed her name from Alicia Moretti to Lisa Sullivan when you married. Did you know that? I shook my head, feeling the room spin slightly. She told me her family called her Lisa since childhood, that she never liked her given name. I didn't question it when she changed it after the wedding. It's not uncommon, Reeves said kindly, but it does make it harder to track past behavior. We're digging deeper now. My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. Unknown number. You should answer it, Agent Reeves said, nodding. Put it on speaker. I answered and placed the phone on the table between us. Rob, listen to me. Lisa's voice was pitched higher than normal, edged with panic. There are federal agents here. They're saying something about fraud charges. You have to tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Is it, Lisa? I kept my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions churning inside me. Or should I call you Alicia? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, then silence. What? A misunderstanding. Is that what you call emptying our retirement accounts and stealing from your company? Is that what you call lying about your entire past? Another pause, then her voice dropped to a harsh whisper. You son of a bitch. You did this? No, Lisa. You did this. I just made sure you couldn't get away with it. You have no idea what you've done, she hissed. James and I had plans. Big plans. You were never supposed to notice until we were long gone. Well, I noticed. They're going to arrest us, Rob? Is that what you want? Your wife in prison? I looked at Agent Reeves, who was listening intently. The woman who tried to steal my life savings and texted me for a divorce with a smiley face? Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. You'll regret this, Lisa said, her voice suddenly cold. James has connections. When we get out of this... Miss Sullivan, Agent Reeves interrupted, leaning toward the phone. This is Special Agent Diana Reeves with the FBI. I advise you to stop speaking and request legal representation immediately. There was silence on the other end, then a choke sound that might have been a sob. The call ended abruptly. Agent Reeves looked at me with something like sympathy. I'm sorry you're going through this, Mr. Sullivan. Finding out your spouse isn't who you thought they were. It's never easy. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The room felt too small suddenly, the walls closing in. I excused myself and stepped outside onto the back deck, gulping in the cool air. Our backyard stretched before me, meticulously landscaped. Lisa had insisted on hiring a professional gardener last year. It's all about appearances, she'd said. People judge you by your lawn. Now I wondered if everything about our life together had been just as superficial, just as carefully cultivated for appearance's sake. I heard the sliding door open behind me and turned to see Agent Thomas stepping out, offering me a glass of water. Thanks, son, I said, taking it gratefully. We're setting up surveillance on the house, he said without preamble. Agent Reeves didn't want to worry you, but given the threats from your wife and this James character, we're taking precautions. You think they'd try something? Probably not, he admitted, but people get desperate when cornered, and these two have a lot to lose. I thought about Lisa's final text. Hope you're ready for what's coming. A shiver ran down my spine despite the warm spring air. We'll have agents nearby until they're formally charged and remanded, Tomas continued, just to be safe. I nodded, grateful for the precaution, even as I tried to convince myself it was unnecessary. Lisa was many things, a liar, a thief, apparently an accomplished actress. But violent? It seemed a stretch. Then again, 24 hours ago, I would have said stealing our retirement funds and embezzling from her company seemed a stretch too. The reality of Lisa's deception hit home that evening when I decided to go through her things. I'd left her dresser and closet untouched all day, avoiding them as if they might somehow contain the answers to questions I wasn't ready to ask. But as night fell and the house grew quiet save for the occasional creak of a floorboard, I found myself drawn to the walk-in closet we shared. Her side was meticulously organized. Color-coded clothes, shoes in clear boxes, accessories hanging on custom hooks. Everything in its place, just like Lisa herself always seemed to be. Perfectly put together, not a hair out of place. I ran my hands along her clothes, the expensive fabrics soft under my fingers. So many new pieces in the last year, items with price tags that made me wince when I saw the credit card statements. Investment pieces, she'd called them, necessary for my position. I'd believed her because I wanted to, because it was easier than questioning, than fighting, than acknowledging the growing distance between us. At the back of the closet, behind a row of winter coats, I found a small safe I'd never seen before. It wasn't bolted down, just a portable fireproof box, the kind you'd buy at an office supply store. Locked, of course. I stared at it for a long moment, then went to the garage and returned with a crowbar. The lock gave way with a satisfying crack, and the lid sprang open to reveal a stack of documents. A passport, not in the name Lisa Sullivan or even Alicia Moretti, but Jennifer Lawson with Lisa's photo, a driver's license in the same name, several credit cards, a small notebook filled with account numbers and passwords, and at the bottom a USB drive. My hands shook as I took the items to my office and plugged the drive into my computer. It contained hundreds of files, photos of us, scans of our marriage certificate, our tax returns, property deeds. Everything someone would need to assume or discard an identity, but it was a folder labeled contingency that made my blood run cold. Inside were detailed instructions for accessing offshore accounts, contact information for someone named Eli, who could provide clean documentation in 48 hours, and a step-by-step plan for disappearing. The final document was a letter addressed to James. It was dated 3 weeks ago. Jay, everything's in place. I've moved the first round of funds from the Westmore account. No red flags so far. R still suspects nothing. We'll need to accelerate the timeline on the Peterson and Blackwell transfers before the quarterly audit. Once those clear, we should have enough to disappear comfortably. I've set up the exit plan for May 15th. I'll text R from Chicago, clean break. By the time he processes what's happening, we'll be out of reach. I've included a draft of what I'll say. Simple, direct, no room for negotiation. The Bali property is confirmed, paid in full via the routing we discussed. 6 months there until things cool down, then we can move on to Plan B. One last thing, I tried for the insurance policy but hit a snag with the medical verification. Too risky to pursue. We'll have to make do with what we can take from the accounts. Counting the days, L insurance policy. The words jumped out at me. I quickly searched through the other documents until I found an application for a life insurance policy on me. $3 million, with Lisa as the sole beneficiary. It had been flagged for review due to discrepancies about my medical history. I sat back in my chair, feeling physically ill. She hadn't just been planning to steal my money, she'd considered collecting on my death. How had I missed this? How had I lived with this woman for 15 years and never seen what she was capable of? A noise from downstairs jolted me from my thoughts. A soft click, like the sound of a door closing. I froze, listening intently. It was nearly midnight. The agents had said they'd be watching the house, but they'd be outside. Another sound, a footstep on the stairs, too heavy to be imagined. Someone was in the house. I moved quickly, silently, grabbing the crowbar I'd left leaning against the desk. The upstairs hallway was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow from my office. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to control my breathing. The footsteps paused, then continued up the stairs. A shadow appeared at the top of the staircase. A man's silhouette, broad-shouldered and moving with purpose. James. I tightened my grip on the crowbar, adrenaline flooding my system. He was supposed to be in custody. How was he here? Had he been released? Had he escaped? He turned toward the master bedroom, away from me, and I seized the opportunity. I lunged forward, swinging the crowbar at his legs. The metal connected with a sickening thud, and he went down with a pained shout, crashing into the hallway table. I raised the crowbar again, ready to strike, when lights suddenly flooded the hallway. Agent Thomas stood at the other end, gun drawn. FBI, don't move! I froze, crowbar still raised, as Thomas rushed forward. The man on the floor rolled over, and I found myself staring not at James Mercer, but at a stranger, younger with a patchy beard and wild eyes. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded. The man glared up at me, clutching his injured leg. "You're gonna pay for that, asshole." Thomas was on him in seconds, securing his wrist with zip ties. "Marcus Wright," he said, reading from the ID he'd pulled from the man's pocket. "Want to explain why you're breaking into Mr. Sullivan's house at midnight?" Wright spat on the floor. "Ask his wife. She paid me $5,000 to come here and send a message." Said her husband needed to be taught a lesson. I stared at him, stunned. Lisa sent you? From jail? Got the call this afternoon. Half up front, rest when I sent her proof of the job. He winced as Thomas tightened the zip ties. Lady didn't mention nothing about feds, though. Agent Reeves appeared at the top of the stairs, gun also drawn. Situation? She asked Thomas. Hired muscle, Thomas replied. Sent by the wife. Reeves looked at me, then at the crowbar still clutched in my hand. Nice work, Mr. Sullivan. Though next time, maybe call for backup before engaging an intruder. I nodded, the full weight of what had just happened crashing over me. Lisa had sent someone to hurt me, or worse, from police custody. Whatever remaining doubt I had about her character vanished in that moment. How did she contact him from jail? I asked. That's what I'd like to know, Reeves said grimly, pulling out her phone. I'm calling this in. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of legal meetings and paperwork. I gave formal statements about the break-in, turned over the documents I'd found in Lisa's hidden safe, and consulted with Alan Becker, the divorce attorney recommended by Agent Reeves. You're in an unusually strong position, Alan told me as we reviewed the case in his office. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and the battle-hardened confidence of someone who'd seen every dirty trick in the divorce playbook. Most clients come to me after they've been blindsided, when assets are already gone and emotions are running the show. You've managed to preserve the financial evidence and keep a clear head. Doesn't feel like it, I admitted, rubbing my temples. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night since Lisa's text. That's normal, he assured me. But trust me, your foresight has made all the difference. The fraud charges alone will significantly impact the divorce proceedings. No judge is going to look favorably on attempted theft of marital assets, especially when combined with corporate embezzlement and now attempted assault. So what's our strategy? Alan smiled thinly. Aggressive but clean. We file first, citing abandonment and financial malfeasance. We request full retention of all marital assets based on her criminal actions, and we push for a quick resolution while she's dealing with criminal charges. She'll fight back, I said. You don't know Lisa. She never admits defeat. She might not have a choice, Alan replied, sliding a document across the desk to me. The investigation has uncovered that your wife has been living under a false identity for years. Before she was Alicia Moretti, she was Angela Torres, wanted in Florida for insurance fraud and identity theft. I stared at the police report in disbelief. The mugshot showed a younger Lisa, hair darker, face thinner, but undeniably her. How far back does this go? At least 10 years before you met her. She's been running cons since she was 19. Alan spread more documents in front of me. She creates identities, builds relationships, then vanishes with whatever she can take. You're not her first husband either. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? She was married to a Thomas Reiner in Miami for 14 months before disappearing with $220,000 from their joint accounts. He filed police reports, but she was already gone. New name, new look, new state. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process this new information. How did she get away with this for so long? She's smart, changes just enough each time. Different regions, different types of scams, and until now she's never hit anyone big enough to trigger a federal investigation. He tapped the file. This time, though, she got greedy. The corporate embezzlement put her on the FBI's radar, and once they started digging, they found the pattern, I finished, a cold certainty settling in my chest. The woman I'd married had never existed at all. The preliminary hearing for Lisa and James was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I hadn't planned to attend. Alan had advised against it. But at the last minute, I found myself driving to the federal courthouse, drawn by some masochistic need to see her face. The courtroom was nearly empty when I slipped into a back row. A few reporters, some Apex executives looking shell-shocked, and a handful of people I didn't recognize. Lisa and James were led in separately, both in standard-issue orange jumpsuits that made them look smaller, diminished. James looked around nervously, his formerly confident demeanor replaced by barely concealed fear. When he spotted me, he quickly looked away, his shoulders hunching as if trying to make himself invisible. Lisa's eyes scanned the room and locked onto mine. For a moment, all the noise seemed to fade away as we stared at each other across the courtroom. Her face, normally so carefully made up, was bare. Her blonde hair, usually styled in a sleek bob, hung limp around her face. She looked older somehow, harder. I expected to feel something, anger, satisfaction, even pity. Instead, there was just a vast emptiness, as if I were looking at a stranger. Because I was. She whispered something to her attorney, who frowned and shook his head. When she turned back to look at me again, her expression had shifted to something calculated, a ghost of the manipulative charm she'd used so effectively during our marriage. The hearing was brief. Both Lisa and James pleaded not guilty to all charges, despite the mountain of evidence against them. Their attorneys requested bail, arguing that neither posed a flight risk. The prosecutor, a stern woman with steel gray hair, stood and systematically demolished that argument. Your Honor, both defendants have demonstrated not only a willingness to commit financial crimes, but to take extraordinary steps to conceal their activities and flee justice. Ms. Sullivan, or Ms. Torres, or Ms. Moretti, depending on which of her many identities we're referring to, has a history of fraud dating back nearly 20 years. She has changed identities multiple times to evade prosecution. She held up a folder. Just yesterday, we discovered property deeds for a residence in Bali, purchased through a shell corporation tied to both defendants. They had concrete plans to flee the country with the stolen funds. Additionally, Ms. Sullivan attempted to arrange for physical harm to come to her husband from her holding cell, demonstrating both her connections to criminal elements and her willingness to escalate beyond financial crimes. The judge, a no-nonsense man in his 60s, denied bail for both defendants. As they were led away, Lisa turned to look at me one last time. The mask of calculation slipped, and for just a moment, I saw something raw and desperate in her expression. I stood up and walked out. I didn't need to see anymore. The forensic accountants finished their analysis, Agent Reeves told me 6 weeks later. We were meeting for coffee, something that had become a semi-regular occurrence since the arrest. Despite the circumstances, I'd come to genuinely like her. She was straightforward, intelligent, and had a dry sense of humor that helped me through some of the darker moments. And, I asked, stirring my Americano, they found even more than we initially thought. Lisa and James stole close to $1.2 million from Apex over 18 months. They were careful, took small amounts from multiple client accounts, manipulated the books to hide the shortfalls. Jesus, I muttered. How did no one notice? James was the CFO. He had access and authority, and they were patient, which is rare in these cases. Most embezzlers get greedy, take too much too fast. These two played the long game. She paused. There's something else. What? We've connected Lisa to 3 other scams in different states. Each time she created a new identity, married a financially stable man, and eventually disappeared with whatever she could take. She sipped her coffee. The FBI has issued a public request for information. We think there may be more victims who never reported the crimes, either out of embarrassment or because they didn't realize the extent of the fraud. I nodded, strangely unsurprised. Any sign of James in these earlier cons? No, he appears to be her most recent partner, but we did find another accomplice, a woman named Veronica Lewis, who worked with Lisa on at least 2 previous identity scams. We're still looking for her. How many people has she done this to? I asked, the scope of Lisa's deception still difficult to comprehend. At least 5 that we've confirmed, possibly more. I shook my head, thinking of all the moments I'd believed were genuine, our first date, our wedding day, the countless small intimacies of 15 years together. Had any of it been real? Or had I just been another mark, carefully cultivated and eventually harvested? There's one more thing you should know, Diana said, her expression solemn. I wouldn't normally share this, but given everything you've been through, we found evidence that Lisa was preparing to frame you for the embezzlement if things went south. What? I looked up sharply. There were documents on her laptop, fabricated emails, modified financial records with your digital signature. If the fraud had been discovered before they could leave the country, she was planning to make it look like you were behind it all. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough, that it almost circled back around to being impressive. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. She really thought of everything, didn't she? She did, Diana agreed. But so did you with your monitoring system. Without that, she might have gotten away with it. Again. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, settled largely in my favor. Lisa, facing decades in federal prison, had little leverage to contest anything. The court granted me full ownership of our home, all recovered retirement assets, and even awarded damages for emotional distress. James fared no better. His wife of 23 years filed for divorce immediately after his arrest, and Apex Marketing filed multiple civil suits against both him and Lisa, for damages to the company's finances and reputation. The criminal trial was scheduled to begin in 6 months. Both had pleaded not guilty, but the mountain of evidence made conviction all but certain. Lisa's attorney had approached the prosecution about a plea deal, but so far nothing had materialized. I sold our house, couldn't stand to live there anymore, with all its memories, and moved to a smaller place closer to the water. The quieter neighborhood and the sound of waves helped me sleep at night, though the nightmares still came regularly. On particularly bad nights, I would walk along the shore and try to pinpoint the exact moment when it all went wrong. Had Lisa, or whatever her real name was, ever felt anything genuine for me? Or had I just been a job to her, a long con that had finally paid off? One evening, as I sat on my deck watching the sunset, my phone rang. Private number. Hello? Rob, it's me. Lisa's voice instantly recognizable, despite sounding smaller, more subdued. I sat up straight, pulse quickening. How are you calling me? Does it matter? I don't have much time. What do you want, Lisa? Or should I call you Angela? Or is it Jennifer this week? She was silent for a moment, and I heard what might have been a shaky breath. I wanted to explain. Explain? I laughed, a harsh sound even to my own ears. Which part? The theft? The embezzlement? The fake identities? Or maybe the part where you tried to have me beaten up from jail? Another pause. You weren't supposed to get hurt. Wright was just supposed to scare you, convince you to drop the charges. Right, because hiring a criminal to break into my house in the middle of the night is totally harmless. You don't understand what it's like in here, she said, her voice hardening. I was desperate. And the life insurance policy you tried to take out on me? Was that just you being desperate too? That was a contingency plan. She hesitated. It was James's idea. Of course it was, I said, not believing her for a second. It's always someone else's fault with you, isn't it? Never your responsibility. You don't understand what it was like, she said, her voice shifting to something more familiar. The manipulative, persuasive tone she'd used countless times during our marriage. I didn't start out planning to do this, but once you're in this life, it's hard to get out. Each new identity, each new beginning, it feels like a chance to finally be someone different, someone better. Spare me the sob story, I said. I found your other husbands, Lisa. All of them. You've been pulling this same con for years. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its manipulative edge, replaced by something harder, colder. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, you were a mark. The perfect mark. Financially secure, emotionally stable, trusting to a fault. The plan was simple. 5 years, maybe 10, then take what I could and disappear. But 10 years became 12, became 15, and I was still there, still playing house. Why stay so long? I asked, genuinely curious despite myself. Because it was easy, she said simply. You were so goddamn trusting, so content with our comfortable little life. I didn't have to work that hard to keep up appearances. And the longer I stayed, the bigger the potential payoff. Until James came along? James understood me, she said, a note of something like genuine emotion in her voice. He saw the real me, not the version I showed you. We were alike, both wanting more, both willing to take risks to get it. When the opportunity came to take client funds, it was too perfect to pass up. And you never felt anything real for me? In 15 years? She paused, and for a moment I thought she might offer something genuine, some small confession of actual feeling that would make our shared history feel less hollow. I felt comfortable, she said finally. You were kind, stable, not too demanding. As husbands go, you weren't the worst role I've had to play. The casual cruelty of her words settled like a stone in my stomach. Goodbye, Lisa, I said quietly, and ended the call. I sat on my deck for a long time after that, watching the sky darken and the first stars appear. The truth in its cold finality was oddly freeing. There was nothing to question anymore, no memories to reinterpret. It had all been a performance, masterful, comprehensive, but ultimately hollow. In the morning, I called Agent Reeves and reported the unauthorized call from Lisa. Then I contacted a real estate agent about selling my new house. But you just moved in, she said, confused. I know, I replied, but I'm thinking about starting over somewhere else, somewhere completely new. 3 weeks later, I boarded a flight to Seattle. a city I'd visited once for a conference and liked for its cool air and distant mountains. I had no job lined up, no place to live, no real plan beyond leaving the wreckage of my old life behind. As the plane took off, I felt an unexpected lightness. Lisa had spent her life becoming new people, shedding identities like snakeskin when they no longer served her purpose. Perhaps there was a twisted lesson in that, not in the deception or the cruelty, but in the possibility of reinvention. I would never be like her. I would never lie about who I was or harm others for personal gain. But I could take this one thing from the ashes of our marriage, the knowledge that it's never too late to start again, to become someone new while still remaining true to yourself. The case against Lisa and James went to trial 6 months later. I testified via video link, unwilling to return to Boston. They were both convicted on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Lisa received an 18-year sentence, James 15. With their criminal history and the severity of the charges, they would serve most of that time. I received occasional updates from Agent Reeves, who had become a friend of sorts. Lisa had tried to escape during a medical transport, adding years to her sentence. James had apparently turned on her during sentencing, claiming she had masterminded everything, which led to a courtroom shouting match that made the local news. The reports washed over me with diminishing impact, like waves on distant shores. I had built a new life in Seattle, a smaller consulting firm, a circle of casual friends, a modest apartment with a view of Puget Sound. I dated occasionally, carefully, my heart guarded, but not completely closed. And sometimes on clear nights when the stars were visible despite the city lights, I would stand on my balcony and feel grateful for the financial monitoring system I'd built years ago, out of caution and fear. It hadn't just saved my retirement funds, it had saved me from years more of living a lie, of sharing my life with someone who saw me not as a husband but as a mark. In an ironic way, Lisa's final betrayal had been her most honest act in our marriage. And for that, at least, I could almost thank her.
Moral of the story. The story illustrates that while trust is the foundation of marriage, blind trust can be a vulnerability, especially regarding financial security. It serves as a stark reminder that greed and a life built on lies eventually collapse under their own weight. Lisa's masterful manipulation worked for years, but her arrogance and underestimation of her husband led to her downfall, proving that living an authentic life is always superior to a profitable lie.